What in the world are you doing here, my daughter's new husband? His face, a mask of pure fury, screamed at me during the reception I had funded. You were explicitly told not to come yesterday. I offered a serene smile, a carefully constructed shield against the sting of his words, and replied, I am leaving, but before I go, I'd like you to say hello to a special guest of mine, an old associate of yours. The moment he saw the man walking toward us, his eyes stretched wide with absolute terror, and he collapsed in a dead faint. The wheels of justice were just beginning to turn. The front doors slammed with such force that the framed art on my foyer wall trembled. Mom! I'm getting married! Maya burst into the house, her cheeks flushed and her breath short, as she extended her left hand towards me as if it were a trophy. A brilliant diamond glittered under the recessed lighting, casting miniature rainbows across her excited face. I carefully placed my teacup on its saucer, the sound of a classical station still playing softly from the stereo. Congratulations, my dear. When did Roger? Last night. At that French bistro in the marina? She interjected, her tone already laced with a defensiveness I hadn't yet earned. She shrugged off her jacket with a sharp, jerky motion, letting it fall over the back of a leather armchair. I know exactly what you're thinking. And what is it that I'm thinking? That he's not the right one for me. That I'm moving too fast. That I need more time. That I have to get to know him on a deeper level. The usual lecture. She paced over to the large bay window before whirling around to confront me. Well, I'm 29 years old, Mom. I am perfectly capable of making my own life choices. I observed her face closely, the smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the nervous way her fingers kept twisting the new ring. After 30 years as a corporate lawyer, I had become an expert at reading people. My experience taught me that those who spoke the quickest were often the ones with the most to conceal. Have you two decided on a date? August 20th. That only gives us 2 months to organize everything. She settled onto the edge of the sofa, poised as if she might flee at any second. Roger envisioned something truly sophisticated and elegant, the type of wedding that leaves a lasting impression. 2 months is incredibly fast we don't feel the need to wait. She cut in, the words tumbling out. What would be the point? When you feel it, you feel it. Isn't that what you always told me about Dad? The comparison was a sharp pang in my chest because it was entirely false. Your father and I were together for 4 years before he proposed. But I knew that pointing this out would only fuel her defiance. So, where are you considering for the venue? The Ritz-Carlton. Roger has some connections there, she said, smoothing the fabric of her skirt and avoiding my gaze. It will be absolutely stunning. We're thinking around 200 guests. 200 guests. At the Ritz-Carlton, I performed a swift calculation in my head and was unsettled by the figure that emerged. That sounds exceptionally expensive. The estimate is around 60,000, perhaps 70, she finally admitted, lifting her chin to look me in the eye, a clear challenge in her posture. I realize it's a significant amount, but this is my wedding, Mom. My only wedding. I want every detail to be perfect. And there it was. The true purpose behind the theatrical entrance, the preemptive defensiveness, and the accelerated timeline. Roger wanted a lavish wedding, and Maya expected me to finance it. $60,000. You always said you'd support me when I decided to get married. You made a promise to Dad before he passed that you would ensure I had a proper wedding. Her voice trembled with emotion. You wouldn't break that promise now, would you? She was correct. I had made that promise to David. But David would have insisted on spending months getting to know Roger, posing insightful questions, and ensuring he was truly worthy of our daughter. David would have seen past his superficial charm in less than 5 minutes. Of course, I will contribute to the wedding, I heard myself say before I could reconsider. But perhaps we could have a discussion about the budget. Thank you. She leaped from the couch and planted a kiss on my cheek, her mood changing with a speed that left me feeling dizzy. Roger is going to be ecstatic. He's been so stressed about the finances, trying to figure out how to pull this off with his limited startup funds. Another warning bell sounded in my mind. What sort of man proposes marriage when he lacks the financial means to see it through? I think I should take Roger out to dinner. It's time I got to know my future son-in-law a bit better. That would be wonderful. He's been eager to discuss his business concepts with you. He has immense respect for accomplished professionals like you. She retrieved her jacket, suddenly in a hurry to depart. I need to go and share the great news about the wedding budget with him. She was already at the door before I had a chance to rise. Maya. Just a moment. Love you, Mom. Thank you for being so understanding. The door closed with a gentle click, leaving me in the silence of the house with only the soft classical music and the lingering echo of her words. I stood staring at the door for a long time. The house felt unnervingly quiet, overwhelmingly empty. $60,000 for a wedding to a man I hardly knew, for a daughter who felt increasingly like a stranger. I turned off the stereo and carried my teacup to the kitchen. The atmosphere in the house had shifted after Maya's whirlwind visit. It was now heavy, with unspoken tensions and conversations left unresolved. I rinsed the cup in the sink, moving through the familiar motions of my evening routine, while my mind obsessively replayed every word and every guarded gesture. The kitchen carried the faint, comforting aroma of the roast chicken I'd made for dinner. David's favorite recipe, though I'd never quite managed to replicate his perfect blend of herbs. I wiped down the granite countertops and meticulously folded the dish towel, searching for any small task to occupy my hands while my thoughts raced. $60,000. The number haunted me, sharp and insistent. Drawn by a sudden urge, I walked to my study. The room was a repository of 2 decades of my life. Legal awards collecting dust on the shelves, digital photo frames cycling through memories David had painstakingly curated, and tax documents filed in perfect chronological order. I woke up the desktop computer, its screen illuminating the dimly lit room. The photos that appeared told a starkly different story from the one that had just unfolded. There was Maya at 6, a wide, gap-toothed grin on her face as she rode on my shoulders at Fisherman's Wharf. At 12, beaming with pride next to her award-winning science fair project on tectonic plates. Her high school graduation, tears of joy streaming down her face as she hugged both of us. The day we moved her into her college dorm, her brave attempts at independence barely concealing her underlying fear. When had she become so defensive, so quick to interpret my concern as disapproval? Perhaps I did disapprove. Roger Sterling had entered our lives 7 months prior, with his designer suits and ambiguous talk of fintech innovations. He would casually mention venture capitalists I'd never heard of, and pepper his speech with buzzwords that sounded impressive but signified nothing. Yet, when he spoke, Maya's eyes would light up as if she were witnessing sheer brilliance rather than a polished performance. I found my favorite photo of the 3 of us, taken at Maya's university graduation. We looked so happy, so whole, so confident in what the future held. David had been gone for 3 years now, but his absence could still ambush me. A sudden, sharp ache in my chest. He would have known exactly how to navigate this situation. David could have posed the tough questions without putting Maya on the defensive. The silence of the empty house felt suffocating, filled with the weight of conversations David and I would never have, and the burden of decisions I now had to face alone. Motherhood didn't conclude when your child turned 18. In many ways, it only grew more complex. When Maya was a little girl, I could protect her from scraped knees and schoolyard bullies. But how do you shield a grown daughter from the consequences of her own choices? My phone vibrated with an incoming text. It was Maya. Roger says dinner tomorrow. At 7:30. Quince on Jackson Square. I stared at the message for a long while before typing my reply. Looking forward to it. Maybe I was being unjust. Maybe my maternal instincts were distorting my perception. Perhaps Roger was exactly who he appeared to be. A young, ambitious entrepreneur deeply in love with my daughter. The extravagant wedding, the practiced charm, the curious way he always seemed to materialize when money was the topic of conversation. Perhaps these were all just coincidences. I shut down the computer. Tomorrow night, I would give Roger Sterling the benefit of the doubt. I would inquire about his business, his vision for the future, and his intentions for Maya. I would embody the supportive mother-in-law he anticipated, not the skeptical lawyer I had become. The antique armoire in the hallway chimed 11. It was time for bed, though I suspected sleep would not come easily. I switched off the study light and headed upstairs, already mentally rehearsing topics for the following night's dinner, common interests, shared values, the very things upon which strong relationships are built. If Roger was to become a part of our family, I was determined to find a way to make it work. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my silk scarf for the third time. It was a beautiful navy blue piece, a gift from David on our 20th anniversary. He always said the color brought out my eyes. Tonight felt significant enough to wear David's scarf, significant enough for my best pearl earrings and the expensive perfume I reserved for momentous occasions. 7:15 p.m. My plan was to arrive precisely on time, not so early as to appear overeager, nor so late as to seem disrespectful. Quince on Jackson Square was Roger's selection, a high-end French restaurant where a single meal likely cost more than my weekly grocery budget in my younger years. But if this was Roger's attempt to impress me, I was willing to participate. I checked my purse, wallet, credit cards, some cash, and a few business cards, just in case the discussion veered into professional territory. My phone showed no new texts from Maya since her confirmation of the dinner plans the previous day. No last-minute adjustments, no nervous messages urging me to be kind to Roger. Perhaps she was confident the evening would go smoothly. Or perhaps she was simply certain Roger could hold his own. The drive downtown would take 30 minutes with the evening traffic. I picked up my keys and walked to the garage, mentally practicing my conversation starters. I would ask about his business, not the vague fintech innovations rhetoric, but specifics, revenue models, client acquisition strategies, 5-year growth projections. These were the kinds of questions that separated a genuine entrepreneur from a pretender. Sports seemed like a safer topic. The Giants were having a promising season. The Warriors were in their rebuilding phase, neutral subjects that required no personal disclosures or professional cross-examination. Although Roger struck me as the type to prefer conversations about golf-exclusive courses, private clubs, the kind of networking that unfolds over 18 holes, I reversed out of my driveway, admiring the golden evening light filtering through the mature oak trees that lined our street in Sausalito. May in the Bay Area always felt like a season of hope. The winter chill finally receded, replaced by the promise of summer warmth. Perhaps tonight symbolized something similar. A new chapter, the expansion of our family, the natural evolution of life that I had been resisting. David would have adored planning a wedding. He would have driven Maya to distraction with endless cake tastings and floral consultations. But in the most loving way possible, he would have discovered common ground with Roger, effortlessly drawing him into the family, with his innate talent for making everyone feel at ease. I was not David, but I could attempt to emulate his approach tonight. Traffic flowed steadily across the Golden Gate Bridge. I had budgeted extra time, so arriving a few minutes early wouldn't be a problem. It might even provide an opportunity to observe how Roger interacted with the restaurant staff. I always believed that the way a person treats service workers reveals everything about their true character. My phone buzzed with a call from an unrecognized number. I ignored it, letting it go to voicemail, my attention fixed on the road and the important conversation that lay ahead. Whatever business matter was calling could wait. Tonight was about forging a connection with the man my daughter intended to marry. The glittering San Francisco skyline unfurled before me as I approached the downtown area, its glass skyscrapers reflecting the colors of the setting sun. This was Roger's world. Pricey restaurants, cosmopolitan flair, the lifestyle that accompanies wealth and ambition. Perhaps that was the allure for Maya. After a childhood spent in the quiet, tree-lined comfort of Sausalito, the vibrant energy of the city must have felt thrilling, brimming with endless possibilities. I found a parking garage a couple of blocks from Quince and took a moment to check my reflection in the rearview mirror. Hair neatly styled, scarf perfectly draped, blazer unwrinkled. I looked the part. A successful professional meeting her future son-in-law, projecting an image that was warm yet discerning, interested but not intrusive. The evening air was crisp with the scent of late spring as I walked toward the restaurant. In a couple of hours, I would have a much clearer sense of whether Roger Sterling was deserving of my daughter's affection and my financial support. Tonight was pivotal. It would establish the foundation for our future relationship. It was time to discover the character of the man who wished to join our family. The maitre d' at Quince led me through the opulent main dining room to a more secluded area at the back. Crystal chandeliers bathed the white linen tables in a warm glow, and the gentle hum of conversation created an atmosphere of refined luxury. I straightened my posture, steeling myself for the effort this evening would demand. The private dining room was set for 8, and all but one seat was taken. Roger rose as I entered, but his smile was cold and failed to reach his eyes. "Ah, here she is. Our generous benefactor," he declared, his voice just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. The other guests, Roger's sister, 2 of his business partners, and an older couple I didn't know, stirred uncomfortably. Maya shot Roger a cautionary glance, but he paid her no mind. "Roger," I said, extending my hand, resolute in my intention to start on a positive note. "Thank you for arranging this." He squeezed my hand with a touch too much force. "But of course, especially since you have such deep pockets to fund our wedding." I took my assigned seat, noticing that Roger had placed himself at the head of the table, as if he were the host of this gathering rather than a guest. A waiter poured me a glass of wine as I discreetly studied the other faces. Roger's sister looked mortified. His business associates appeared to be well versed in feigning ignorance of his behavior. "So, Clara," Roger began, leaning back in his chair with an air of smug satisfaction, "Maya tells me you're a partner at your law firm. Must be wonderful to have reached a point where you can just coast." "I managed to stay quite busy," I replied, keeping my voice even and professional. "What about your ventures? Maya mentioned you're involved in something quite innovative." "Several projects, actually. The technology is a bit complex for you to grasp," he said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "It demands a certain forward-thinking mindset that your generation often finds challenging." Maya reached a hand across the table toward Roger. "He didn't mean—" "I meant precisely what I said," Roger interrupted, his gaze fixed on me. "Some people are simply stuck in their old ways. Corporate law, traditional investments, safe, but utterly uninspired." The older couple at the table exchanged a worried look. Roger's sister was now examining her salad with an intensity that suggested she wished she were anywhere else on earth. "Traditional approaches have their advantages," I responded with care. "Stability, proven results, actual profit." "Profit?" Roger let out a laugh that was devoid of any humor. "How wonderfully conventional. Tell me, did you ever take a real risk in your career? Or did you just climb the corporate ladder like everyone else?" A flush of anger rose in my cheeks, but I held my composure. Every career involves calculated risks. The skill lies in distinguishing between a genuine opportunity and reckless speculation. Spoken like a true conservative, Roger sneered, raising his wine glass in a mocking toast. It's no wonder Maya had to find someone with a real vision for her future. Maya's face turned a deep shade of crimson. Roger, that's enough. This is meant to be a celebration. And it is a celebration. We're celebrating Maya's liberation from constrained thinking. He leaned back, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle he was creating. Though I suppose we should be grateful for the financial assistance, even if it comes with a side of antiquated advice. I felt my jaw clench, but I managed to keep my voice steady. I am here because I care deeply about Maya's happiness. I truly hope we can find some common ground. Common ground? Roger repeated the words, as if they left a foul taste in his mouth. You mean the ground where you rubber? Stamp my decisions, and I feign respect for your opinions? The waiter arrived with our main courses, creating a brief interruption. But Roger was far from finished. He began to cut his steak with an exaggerated, theatrical flourish, the knife grating loudly against the ceramic plate. Actually, Clara, I've been giving some thought to our future family dynamic. I believe some clear boundaries will be necessary. Roger's wine glass was already half drained when the entrees were served. The alcohol seemed to have eroded any semblance of restraint he might have had, and a predatory glint in his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. You know what I've realized tonight? Roger proclaimed, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of adjacent tables. Family dinners are much more pleasant when everyone understands their proper role. Maya's fork stopped midway to her mouth. Roger, maybe we should— No, allow me to finish. He held up a hand as if directing an orchestra. Your mother seems to be confused about her role in our upcoming marriage. I carefully placed my knife on my plate, a familiar calm settling over me, the same calm I felt just before a critical negotiation. I'm not certain I follow. Oh, I believe you do, Roger said, leaning forward. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that was somehow more menacing than a shout. You see, there's a matter we need to settle regarding the wedding. The table was plunged into silence. Even Roger's normally talkative sister had stopped eating, sensing the dramatic shift in the atmosphere. Roger sat up straight, his voice booming once more. Listen, old woman, you are not expected to be at the wedding tomorrow. The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Around the table, I could hear sharp gasps and the clatter of silverware being hastily set down. That is completely unacceptable. Maya's voice trembled with shock and fury. Roger, you can't just— Actually, I can, Roger retorted, his satisfaction almost tangible. It's our wedding, Maya. We are the ones who decide who belongs there and who does not. Roger, stop this immediately. Maya's hands were shaking as she reached for him. This is my mother you're talking about. Yes, your mother, who has second-guessed my every decision from the moment we met. Roger turned his attention back to me, his smile as sharp as a razor's edge. Maya, your mother is once again ruining our evening. I looked at him from across the table, absorbing the calculated cruelty of his actions. This was not a spontaneous outburst fueled by alcohol. It was a meticulously planned humiliation, executed in front of an audience to assert his dominance. The other guests sat motionless, their eyes cast downward as if they were witnessing a horrific accident. Roger's sister had her hand clamped over her mouth. One of his business associates was studying his wine glass with an almost comical level of focus. I see, I said, folding my napkin and placing it neatly beside my plate. Thank you for making the situation perfectly clear. Mom, please don't. Maya began to rise, but Roger's hand clamped down on her wrist, stopping her. Let her go, sweetheart. Some people simply can't handle honest communication. I stood up slowly, my movements deliberate and controlled despite the inferno of rage building within me. 30 years of high-stakes legal battles had taught me when to engage and when to make a strategic retreat. This was neither the time nor the place for a confrontation. Maya, I said, looking directly at my daughter and ignoring Roger entirely. I love you. That will never, ever change. Mommy, please. We can fix this, she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. But she made no move to pull her wrist from Roger's grasp. Call me when you're ready to have a real conversation. A truly honest one. I reached for my purse, but Roger waved his hand dismissively. Don't bother with the check, Clara. I've already taken care of it. Of course. He had with my money, funneled through Maya's bank account. I walked toward the exit with measured steps, offering a polite nod to the maitre d', determined to maintain the dignity that Roger had so viciously tried to strip from me. Behind me, I could hear Maya's voice escalating into an argument, and Roger's responses growing increasingly defensive. The cool night air was a welcome relief. As I stepped out onto Jackson Square, the city buzzed with life around me. The flow of traffic, the faint sound of music from a nearby bar, the laughter of people enjoying their Friday night. Normal people, with normal problems. I retrieved my car from the valet, tipped him generously, and sat behind the wheel for a moment, collecting myself before starting the engine. My hands were not shaking. My breathing was even. But deep inside me, something fundamental had shifted. Roger Sterling had just made the most significant mistake of his life. The steering wheel felt cool and solid beneath my hands. As I pulled away from the restaurant, the slow-moving traffic of downtown San Francisco gave me ample time to process the evening's events. Each red light was an opportunity to replay Roger's words, to dissect the calculated cruelty of his public humiliation. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maya's name flashed on the screen, but I ignored it, letting the call go to voicemail. We both needed space to process what had just occurred before any productive conversation could take place. The city lights streamed past my windows, glass towers, reflecting the street lights. Pedestrians hurrying to their Friday night engagements. The ordinary pulse of urban life continued, even as my own world had been irrevocably altered. I had entered that restaurant with the naive belief that diplomacy could resolve any conflict. I left with the chilling certainty that Roger Sterling was far more dangerous than a simple opportunist. On the Embarcadero, I made a spontaneous decision to turn towards the Golden Gate Bridge overlook, instead of heading straight back to Sausalito. It was a place David and I had often gone when we needed to think through complex issues. I parked my car facing the bay, the dark expanse of water stretching out to an unseen horizon. The iconic bridge rose majestically to my left, while the city skyline glowed behind me. Ahead, there was only darkness and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore. This was my sanctuary for difficult moments. The place I came when legal cases went awry, or when I faced challenging decisions. Roger's behavior tonight was not about a wedding guest list or family tensions. It was a raw display of power. A public declaration that he had complete control over Maya. The way he had gripped her wrist, the smug satisfaction in his voice as she defended him despite his cruelty. These were not the actions of a man in love. I had spent 3 decades reading people in boardrooms and courtrooms. The desperate ones always talked too much. The dishonest ones deflected questions with aggression. And the truly dangerous ones derived pleasure from inflicting pain. Roger Sterling enjoyed inflicting pain. My phone buzzed again. This time, I listened to the voicemail Maya had left. Mom, I am so sorry. Roger had too much to drink, and he's been under a lot of stress with the wedding finances. He didn't mean any of what he said. Please, call me back. We have to fix this. She was already making excuses for him, rewriting the evening's narrative to cast Roger as a victim of circumstance rather than the architect of a deliberately cruel act. I had seen this pattern before in my professional life, people so deeply invested in a bad decision that they would rationalize anything to avoid admitting their mistake. But this wasn't a business deal. This was my daughter's future. I gazed out at the dark water, recalling David's advice from our years of parenting. Sometimes, Protecting them means letting them fail, he used to say. But other times, it means intervening, even if they resent you for it. The critical question was, which situation was this? Roger's defensive aggression was a clear indicator of someone with secrets to protect. His vague descriptions of his business, his opulent lifestyle, with no discernible source of income, his immediate hostility towards anyone who asked questions. These were not the hallmarks of legitimate success. I started the car and drove back towards Sausalito with a newfound sense of purpose. Protecting Maya would require more than just motherly advice. It would demand the same investigative skills that had served me so well in my legal career, the ability to conduct thorough research, to ask the right questions, and to uncover the truths that people tried to keep buried. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my decision was made. I would not stand by and watch as Roger destroyed my daughter's life from the inside out. I would not cling to the hope that love could somehow triumph over such glaring red flags. Starting tomorrow, I would uncover exactly who Roger Sterling truly was. The waterfront wedding venue was breathtaking under the afternoon sun, its panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the San Francisco Bay. Cascades of white roses adorned every surface, and a string quartet played a soft, elegant melody near the dance floor, where Maya glided like a dream in her magnificent gown. She looked utterly radiant, her happiness genuine and palpable, completely oblivious to the tempest that was about to descend upon her perfect day. I adjusted my scarf and stepped through the main entrance, my lawyer's mind automatically assessing the layout for tactical advantages. The reception hall was long and spacious, with multiple exits and clear sightlines ideal for the events I had set in motion. It had been a long and intense night. After leaving the Overlook, I had spent hours leveraging my network of contacts, meticulously following digital and paper trails, and making a series of strategic phone calls, 23 of them, to be exact. The 24th call had connected me with Marcus Thorne, and from that point, everything had fallen into place with the precision of a well-argued legal case. Roger was holding court by the bar, a champagne flute in hand, gesturing expansively as he regaled a group of admirers with tales of fintech innovations and revolutionary market disruptions. His designer tuxedo was a perfect fit, undoubtedly purchased with someone else's money. The confident smile, the easy grace with which he accepted congratulations. He genuinely believed he had won our confrontation the previous night. I found a discreet spot at the back of the venue, near the service entrance that Marcus would use for his arrival. From this vantage point, I could observe the entire scene without drawing attention to myself. The bitter irony was not lost on me. Standing in the shadows at my own daughter's wedding, poised to dismantle her new husband's life, the wedding guests, a collection of the city's elite, mingled with an air of effortless sophistication that only money can buy. I recognized a few faces from the disastrous dinner party, and others from Maya's college days. They laughed and clinked their glasses, celebrating what they perceived to be a beautiful love story. None of them had any inkling that they were witnessing the final act of an elaborate and cruel deception. My phone vibrated with a text from Marcus. "Parking now. Have the legal documents. Give me 5 minutes." The plan was elegantly simple. Marcus would make his entrance at the peak of the celebration, the moment when Roger felt most triumphant and was surrounded by the largest possible audience. Public humiliation, I had decided, was a far more fitting form of justice than a private confrontation. Roger had chosen to embarrass me in front of his chosen witnesses. Now, he would learn what it felt like to be exposed when the stakes were highest. Maya spun across the dance floor, her gown swirling around her like a cloud, her smile bright enough to rival the venue's crystal chandeliers. For a fleeting second, my determination wavered. This was her wedding day, a day she had dreamed of her entire life. Was I truly about to shatter her happiness, just to satisfy my own need for justice? Then, I remembered Roger's words from the night before. "Your mother is once again ruining our evening." I recalled the calculated cruelty, the public dismissal, and the proprietary way he had gripped Maya's wrist when she had tried to defend me. This was not about my wounded pride. This was about protecting my daughter from a predator who viewed her as nothing more than a means to an end. Roger's laughter echoed across the room as he recounted some anecdote to his captivated audience. He gestured towards the bay, likely taking credit for selecting such a magnificent venue. Everything about him was a performance, from his well-rehearsed charm to his borrowed air of confidence. The string quartet shifted to a livelier, more celebratory piece. Guests began to gather around the newlyweds for photographs, their smartphones capturing what they believed to be moments of pure bliss. In just a few minutes, those same phones would be recording a very different kind of event. I checked my watch. Marcus should be walking through the entrance any second now. Roger continued his performance, completely unaware that his past was on a collision course with his present. Across the room, Roger's eyes scanned the crowd, basking in the adoration, reveling in his momentary victory. Then, his gaze met mine. The champagne flute paused halfway to his lips. The confident smile flickered, then vanished completely. Roger's expression shifted from triumph to unadulterated fury in the span of a heartbeat. He thrust his champagne glass into the hands of a nearby guest and began to carve a path through the crowd with a predatory intensity. In his expensive tuxedo, he looked like a shark moving through a school of unsuspecting fish. Conversations died down as he shoved past dancing couples and chattering groups. The string quartet continued to play, but a palpable tension had descended upon the reception, as guests sensed an imminent confrontation. Maya looked up from her photographs, her radiant face clouded with confusion. "What are you doing here?" Roger's voice boomed across the hall, slicing through the music and laughter like a shard of glass. "You were told not to come yesterday." The words ricocheted off the glass walls, reaching every corner of the venue. The string quartet faltered, and then fell silent. Guests turned to face us, their expressions a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. Smartphones were instinctively raised, ready to capture the unfolding drama. I remained perfectly still, my hands clasped calmly behind my back, observing Roger's public unraveling with a lawyer's detachment. This was precisely the outcome I had anticipated, his arrogance laid bare for all to see. "Roger, please," Maya pleaded, starting towards us, the silk of her wedding dress rustling with urgency. "No!" He held up a trembling hand, his voice cracking with a combination of alcohol and rage. "This woman disrespected me. She disrespected our relationship. And now she has the audacity to show up uninvited, to ruin our wedding." "I'm leaving," I said quietly, my voice carrying with surprising clarity in the silent room. "But first, allow me to introduce my special guest." I gestured towards the entrance, where Marcus Thorne had just appeared with impeccable timing. "I believe you are acquainted with your old friend." Marcus Thorne was a man who commanded attention. Tall and silver-haired, he wore a bespoke charcoal suit that radiated power and wealth. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who was at home in boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. In his hand, he carried an expensive-looking leather briefcase. The aggression drained from Roger's posture as recognition dawned. His face turned from pale to ashen, the color seeping away as if from a punctured vessel. "Roger Sterling." Marcus's voice was crisp and authoritative, the kind one hears in courtrooms and during hostile takeovers. "It's been a long time." A confused murmur rippled through the wedding guests, who sensed that something momentous was happening but could not yet grasp its significance. Roger stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no sound emerged. Marcus advanced with deliberate steps, each footfall echoing in the now silent reception hall. He opened his briefcase with practiced ease and removed a thick sheaf of legal documents. "Roger Sterling, you are hereby served." He pressed the papers into Roger's trembling hands. "This is a lawsuit demanding the repayment of $1.5 million, plus accrued interest and legal fees, which you fraudulently obtained from Thorn Venture Capital under false pretenses. The words landed like hammer blows. Roger's hands shook violently as he held the documents, seemingly unable to comprehend what was happening. His carefully constructed world was imploding in real time, in front of everyone who mattered in his newly fabricated life. Maya gasped, her bridal bouquet slipping from her nerveless fingers and scattering across the floor. $1.5 million. Roger! What is he talking about? The wedding guests pressed closer, abandoning all pretense of polite detachment. Cell phones were now openly recording every second as Roger stared at the legal papers as if they were written in an alien script. 2 years, Marcus continued, his powerful voice filling the hall. I've been searching for you for 2 years, Mr. Sterling. You vanished with my investors' money, left behind a trail of forged documents, and then had the gall to reinvent yourself with someone else's daughter. Roger's knees seemed to buckle. He clutched the papers with white-knuckled hands, his wedding day bravado evaporating like mist in the sun. The man who had humiliated me less than 24 hours earlier now looked like a trapped animal. Roger, Maya's voice cracked with rising horror. Is this true? Did you steal money? But Roger was incapable of answering. He stood paralyzed, holding the evidence of his crimes, while his new bride and their wedding guests watched his elaborate facade crumble to dust. Roger's hands trembled as he scanned the court summons, his eyes darting across the legal jargon that detailed his financial and personal ruin. The magnificent wedding venue had transformed into a courtroom, with 150 guests, now serving as the jury for his public destruction. 500, 0 plus interest, he whispered, the number itself seeming to inflict a physical wound. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, despite the cool breeze blowing in from the bay. His designer tuxedo now looked like a cheap costume, a prop in a play that had reached its disastrous final scene. The wedding guests surged forward, their celebratory mood replaced by a morbid fascination with the unfolding drama. Their smartphones documented every moment of Roger's breakdown, capturing his metamorphosis from a confident groom into an exposed criminal. The string quartet remained frozen in place, their instruments at the ready, uncertain whether to resume playing for a party that had ceased to exist. Marcus observed Roger's reaction with a look of professional satisfaction. Clara. Thank you, he said, extending his hand to me. I've been on this man's trail for 2 years. Your legal and business contacts were instrumental in finally tracking him down. Justice needed to be served, I replied simply, shaking his hand. The words hung in the air, offering a partial explanation to the bewildered wedding guests. Maya stood as if turned to stone in her wedding gown, the scattered bouquet at her feet, a poignant symbol of her shattered dreams. Roger, please, just tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal from people. But Roger remained silent. The court papers quivered in his hands as he read the details of his fraudulent activities, forged documents, phantom corporations, and elaborate schemes that had financed his lavish lifestyle. Every expensive dinner, every designer suit, every romantic gesture, all funded by stolen money. The wedding, Maya whispered, the horrifying realization dawning in her voice. This venue, the flowers, my dress. Where did all the money come from? Roger's silence was the only answer she needed. His carefully crafted persona had disintegrated in a matter of minutes, leaving only the stark reality of what he truly was. A common thief who had used my daughter's love as a shield for his criminal enterprise. Marcus closed his briefcase with a sharp, definitive snap. Mr. Sterling, you have 30 days to respond to this summons. I strongly advise you to retain a competent attorney. He then turned to me, his expression one of genuine gratitude. Thank you again, Clara. The authorities will likely want to speak with you regarding how you managed to locate him. The wedding reception had completely imploded. Guests were now gathered in stunned clusters, their celebratory chatter replaced by hushed whispers and pointed fingers. The elegant waterfront venue, with its panoramic views and exquisite floral arrangements, had become the stage for a public humiliation and a criminal exposé. I looked at my daughter, still beautiful in her wedding dress, but now burdened with the knowledge that her marriage was a foundation of lies and stolen money. The pain in her eyes was a knife to my heart. But, beneath the anguish, I could see the first flicker of understanding. She was beginning to realize that her mother had not been trying to control her life, but to save it. "Maya," I said softly, walking over to where she stood frozen, amidst the scattered roses. "I am so sorry it had to happen like this." She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears and confusion. You knew what he was." "I had my suspicions. So I investigated. And I found Marcus." I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sometimes, protecting the people we love requires us to do things they can't understand until much later. Roger finally managed to speak, but his voice was a broken whisper. "Maya, I can explain. This is all just a big misunderstanding. I was going to pay it all back." "With what money?" Marcus interjected coldly. "You have no legitimate business, no real income, and no assets that you haven't stolen from someone else." The unvarnished truth hung in the air like the smoke from an extinguished fire. Roger's empire of lies had collapsed in less than 10 minutes, leaving a trail of legal papers and broken promises in its wake. Marcus and I walked towards the exit together, our business now concluded. Behind us, the elegant wedding reception continued its grim transformation into something akin to a crime scene, complete with witnesses and evidence. Justice had been delivered with perfect timing and devastating precision. The drive home was unlike any I had ever experienced. The familiar tree-lined streets of Sausalito seemed quieter, more settled, as if the very neighborhood understood that a great wrong had been righted. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, replaying the afternoon's events, with the quiet satisfaction of a lawyer who has just won the most important case of her career. Inside the house, the silence felt peaceful rather than empty. I went directly to my home office, where the wedding contracts and financial records were arranged in neat stacks on my desk. David had always admired my organizational skills. Everything filed, labeled, and easily retrievable for moments just like this. My first call was to the private banking division at my bank, where Melissa Hayes had been managing my accounts for over a decade. "Miss Stewart? How may I help you today?" "Melissa, I need to cancel a wire transfer that is scheduled for tomorrow. It's for $60,000, payable to the Ritz-Carlton Catering Services." "Of course. Do you have the reference number?" I read the confirmation number from my notes, listening to the soft clicks of her keyboard as she located the transaction. "Here it is. It was for the final payment for wedding services. Should I cancel the entire transfer?" "Yes, please. The contracts have been nullified due to the discovery of fraud. I will process that for you immediately. You can expect written confirmation within the next 24 hours. The efficiency was deeply satisfying. No intrusive questions, no judgment, just professional service addressing a legitimate business concern. Next, I began the vendor calls, moving through my list with systematic precision, documenting each conversation as I would for a legal case. The florist was the first to answer. "For the Sterling wedding? Oh my. We heard the reception came to a rather sudden end. Is everyone all right? The contracts are now void due to the discovery of significant fraud. I am stopping all payments, effective immediately." Her tone instantly shifted to a businesslike crispness. "I see. Well, the flowers were delivered and arranged as per the contract. We will need to discuss partial payment for services rendered. Please send an itemized invoice. You will need to address all collection efforts to Mr. Roger Sterling." Each subsequent call followed a similar script. The catering manager expressed his concern about the premature end to the reception. The band leader wanted to know about the final payment for their 3-hour set. The photographer inquired about the delivery of the wedding photos. To each, I delivered the same professional response. Fraud has been discovered. All contracts are void. Please direct your collection efforts to Roger Sterling. By 7 o'clock, I had completed 10 calls and canceled 7 different payment authorizations. The total financial liability would now fall directly on Roger and Maya, approximately $42,000 in immediate vendor bills, funds that would not be coming from my accounts. A brief wave of concern for Maya washed over me. She would wake up tomorrow to a harsh financial reality she had never known, facing bills that her fraudulent husband could not possibly pay. But I knew that sometimes, protecting someone means allowing them to feel the full weight of their choices. My phone rang as I was filing the last of the confirmation documents. The caller ID showed Maya's name. I stared at the screen for a long moment, before letting the call go to voicemail. She needed time to fully process what Roger truly was before we could have a meaningful conversation. Tonight, she was likely still furious with me for destroying her wedding. Tomorrow, she might begin to understand that I had saved her from a far worse fate. The phone rang again before I had finished organizing the paperwork. Maya's name flashed on the screen, vanished when I didn't answer, and then reappeared 3 minutes later. I went to the kitchen and began to prepare a simple dinner for myself. Grilled salmon, steamed asparagus, and quinoa. Normal, methodical, peaceful. The phone rang twice more while I was seasoning the fish. I settled into my favorite armchair in the living room, with a cup of chamomile tea and the evening news. The mayor was discussing a new urban renewal project. The Giants had won their game. The forecast predicted clear skies for the rest of the week. The phone rang again during the sports report. Maya. I sipped my tea and listened to the weather forecast, trying to recall if I had any weekend plans that might be affected by the predicted sunshine. The garden desperately needed some attention, but that could wait until this family crisis had passed. 15 minutes later, another call, then another. The pattern quickly became predictable. Every 5 to 10 minutes, Maya's name would illuminate my phone screen. I started to count them. Call number 7 came during the national news. Call number 8 during a commercial break. Call number 9 when the local news anchor returned. By 8:30 p.m., the count had reached 19. I switched the channel to a documentary about the Amazon rainforest, finding the vibrant ecosystem more calming than the drama unfolding through my phone. Even the brutal realities of survival in the wild seemed less complicated than human relationships. Call 23 came during a segment on poison dart frogs. Call 24 interrupted a discussion about deforestation. I refilled my teacup and put on my reading glasses, settling in for what I knew would be a long night. The documentary concluded at 9:15. The call count was now at 32. I surfed the channels for a bit, finally landing on an old black and white mystery film that David had loved. The detective was interrogating a cast of suspicious characters, each one harboring secrets that would inevitably be revealed. Art imitating life, but with wittier dialogue and more stylish settings. Between 9:15 and 10:00, 13 more calls came through. The desperation was palpable, even through the unanswered rings. The intervals between her attempts grew shorter. The phone would barely fall silent before it began to ring again. Call number 45 arrived at 10:07. I turned off the television and began my nightly routine. Tomorrow would bring its own set of challenges, new conversations, and new opportunities for Maya to understand the reasons behind my seemingly cruel actions. Tonight, she was learning a difficult lesson. That actions have consequences. That fraudulent husbands come with unforeseen costs. And that true independence is more than just a declaration. In the bathroom, I brushed my teeth while the phone remained blessedly silent for nearly 8 minutes. The reprieve was broken by call number 46, which came as I was changing into my pajamas. By the time I turned off the lights and got into bed, Maya had called 45 times in just over 3 hours. I switched my phone to silent mode and placed it face down on the nightstand. She would have to navigate this crisis on her own, without her mother's financial intervention. Sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is refuse to answer the phone. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the Alameda County Courthouse, watching as Roger Sterling was sentenced. The man who had so arrogantly humiliated me at dinner now looked 20 years older. His designer suits had been replaced by a standard-issue orange jumpsuit, and his smug demeanor had been utterly crushed by the weight of multiple felony convictions. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 18 months in state prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $1,700 to the victims identified in this case. Judge Ramirez announced, her voice resonating with finality. Marcus, seated on the bench next to me, leaned over. 15 victims in total. The investigation uncovered a much wider web of deceit than just my case. Roger had constructed an entire criminal enterprise built on charm and a facade of credibility investment scams, fictitious partnerships, and forged documents. The sheer scale of his fraud made my daughter's narrow escape seem all the more miraculous. Outside the courthouse, Marcus shook my hand, his gratitude genuine. I never would have found him without your connections, Clara. Thank you for making that call. Justice needed to be served. I replied, the same words I had spoken at Maya's wedding. They felt just as fitting now. Marcus walked toward his car, his briefcase filled with the restitution paperwork that would, in time, help recover most of his stolen funds. I stood on the courthouse steps for a long time, watching the afternoon traffic flow past, and wondering if my daughter was ready to begin rebuilding our relationship. That evening, I finally called her. Mom. Her voice was different, more mature, more cautious, but devoid of the defensive anger I had anticipated. Hello, sweetheart. I thought it was time we talked. I've been waiting for your call. A long pause followed. I found out about the other victims. 15 people, Mom. Roger stole from 15 different people. I know. I was at his sentencing today. You were there? Another pause, this one even longer. I should have been there too. But I couldn't bring myself to see him again. You never have to see him again. The vendors. They've been calling non-stop. The bills, the canceled payments. I understand now. I understand what you did. And why you did it. Her voice hitched. I am so sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm so sorry I didn't see what you saw in him. Come over for dinner tomorrow night, I said gently. We have a lot to talk about. The next evening, Maya arrived at my house at 6 o'clock sharp. She brought a bottle of wine and was dressed in the kind of sophisticated business attire that suggested she was taking her career with a new seriousness. She looked weary, but also stronger, like someone who had endured a great trial and emerged with invaluable wisdom. You saved me from becoming victim number 16, she said, as we sat down to eat. I protected my daughter. That's what mothers do, even when their daughters are too stubborn to see it. She raised her wine glass in a toast. To wisdom gained the hard way. We talked late into the night, until nearly midnight. We talked about trust, independence, financial responsibility, and the crucial difference between supporting someone and enabling their destructive behavior. Maya had spent 3 weeks discovering what life was like without her mother's safety net, and the experience had taught her more about self-reliance than any lecture ever could. I'm going to pay you back, she said as we cleared the dinner plates. Every single dollar. From the vendors, from the wedding expenses, everything. It might take me a long time, but I will pay it all back. Keep your money, I told her. Consider it tuition for one of life's most important lessons. She hugged me then. A real, heartfelt hug. For the first time since before she had met Roger Sterling, justice had been served. Our family bond, though tested, had been reaffirmed and strengthened. And my daughter had emerged from the ordeal wiser, more independent, and finally safe from the charming predator who had nearly ruined her life.